And welcome back to the 18 News Studio. I'm George Stockberg here, joined by Frank Acom and Leslie Danks-Burke. And you just watched our 18 News debate for Chemung County Sheriff, as well as the Elmira Mayoral Town Hall. So a lot of interesting stuff that kind of came out of that debate. But one thing that came up a lot was the suicides in the Chemung County jail system. And Frank, I want to start with you. There's a little bit of debate on the numbers and the time frame. What was your thought on that debate?
I thought they were a little bit aggressive with the numbers by our. I think he was trying to get the point across. Bill just saying that this is not just our area that's dealing with this, and that they've been exonerated in all the research. But I think it was definitely fair to ask and Art to be aggressive with that, because it is a major issue. It's one of those ones where you walk away and you wonder what the exact numbers are now. I mean, I think Bill did a good job of explaining there was 3 suicides and 1 overdose, but of course you would want to know more information about that. That's a very serious issue.
Yeah, and Leslie, again, they said one of those is still under investigation, but one of those was an overdose. We've reported here, and the 2 others are suicides. What were your thoughts about part of that debate?
Well, when you hear a law enforcement officer say that it's been investigated and we've been exonerated, it just sends my mind to wonder: is he serving the office of the sheriff, or is he serving the people? And I think his answers, acting Sheriff Schramm's, it's hard to say that. Answers very often went to the concerns that he had inside the sheriff's department, and questions of money and who's to blame inside the sheriff's department. And I would want to make sure that the sheriff really is maintaining in his mind that his obligation is to serve the people who are paying his salary, in fact, and voting for him into office.
And the one thing that Bill did say, he's not a politician. He sees himself more as an elected official, sees himself more as serving the people. And Art came back and said, you are a career politician. You've been in this office, the sheriff's office, for a while now. One of the other things that came up was the SAFE Act. And Leslie, I'll start with you. Both of them said it would be sort of overreaching and affecting lawful gun owners. What were your thoughts on that part of the debate?
Exactly. Both of them had the same opinion on the SAFE Act, that it is a misguided piece of legislation that imposes real burdens on our law-abiding citizens. In fact, Schramm brought that up in his opening statement. Even before the question was asked about the SAFE Act, that was one of the first things that he mentioned right off the top, was his concern about the SAFE Act. And I think that, the 2 of them had that in common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. They seem to, one of the few things they agreed with almost totally. I mean, that, and I think consolidation was the other one where they both seem to be on the same page. One thing, I had a kind of a wish list of some of the things I would have liked to see, and Sheriff Schramm mentioned it, but the red flag laws, I would have liked to heard Art's opinion on that a little bit more. But I thought they were both on overall the same page.
It was interesting, though, that they then differed on cash bail, and in my opinion, the SAFE Act imposes problems on law-abiding citizens, and so does the cash bail system, because frankly, bail is imposed on people who have not yet been convicted of a crime. So we just, at the point that someone is paying bail, you have no idea whether they've actually committed a crime or not. So as far as our legal system is concerned, those are law-abiding citizens at that point too. And then their opinions differed at that point. So, Art Lowry stayed consistent and said that we should, he didn't draw this parallel, it's me drawing this parallel, but he said just as he said on the SAFE Act that it shouldn't impose an undue burden on law-abiding citizens, he also thought cash bail should not do that, whereas Bill Schramm changed his position there. On the SAFE Act piece, he's concerned about law-abiding citizens, but on cash bail, he was more concerned about making sure that, we're locking people up.
I regretted in the pre-debate not mentioning that being one of the things I wanted to see, because everybody's talking about this new reform, and I think it's one of those things, and Sheriff Schramm kind of spoke to it, that we're going to find out what's going to happen way down the road, right? Not right at first. And I thought that was a really solid point that he made. But it was interesting throughout the debate what they did agree on and what they disagreed on. And sometimes it was just a little bit, and sometimes it was very, very big, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the things, again, a couple different issues that came up was the drug crisis, the opioid crisis. But it's not just affecting us here in Chemung County, but all across the country. Art said if things were fine, we wouldn't be in this current situation. Frank, what were your thoughts on that?
I thought Art had a few good ideas. More officers, more tools. That's also difficult too, because you talk about resources. I mean, you got to look at the realistic side of it too. I thought Bill did a very good job at that point, talking about his response to the opioid epidemic, talking about what they have been doing. Obviously,
Operation Hope.
Operation Hope was a big issue, and it came up later with the mayor. I think he did a very good job telling what the community's doing, but then Art came back with kind of the idea of, is it enough though? So, you know, it's the question we can't solve. If we could, we would be up there on stage, right, of the opioid epidemic, so.
Well, and you know, this is one of the places where I thought that Art Lowry really shone. I thought that this was one of the spots where his debate performance was particularly strong, because the acting sheriff did answer the question with, you know, everything that we have been doing in the past. Well, the facts on the ground are, it's not working, right? And Art Lowry really came in and made that point. You know, if it was working, we wouldn't be having this question. So, you know, that really is a question that I think goes to anybody who's currently serving in office. That's always the challenge of the person who's the incumbent, is, wait a minute, if you're going to tell me everything that you've done, how come it isn't fixed yet?
Yeah, and part of the drug issue, they also talked about marijuana. You know, Art said he just came from Colorado and kind of saw some of the effects of that. They both said, you know, they're not in favor of the legalization of marijuana, but Art made it a point to say if it's legal, we have to support it as law enforcement.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, going back to kind of your point about some of the things that Art stayed consistent on. I agree with Acting Sheriff Bill Schramm that it's interesting how anti-marijuana we were for so long, and then we saw a revenue. This isn't again to our own debates, but I thought that was a good point that's not made very often, where when money's involved,
suddenly if you can make money off of it, suddenly you're interested.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's a
so
problem.
I thought that was a very good point, but that was one of the more unique questions I thought of the night.
Yeah. And Leslie, your thoughts on the marijuana issue that kind of came up in the debate?
Yeah, I guess I agree with everything that's been said. The two of them agreed. I'm going back here and looking at my notes.
I know.
I thought that Bill Schramm made a good point that it is the teachers and the law enforcement officers, and he had a third group, I think it was the district attorneys, who all have come out together. And you know, frankly, you talk about the teachers and the law enforcement officers, that's pretty much everybody who's spending time with our young people. So if they're united on that.
And that was something that Art brought up at one point, and I can't remember what it was in reference to, but talking about bullying in schools and dealing with bullying in schools. That was a unique answer, because yes, we all want to do something about bullying, but you don't really necessarily think of that in the answer, in the context he had, and I just can't remember where it was. And also, I think just overall, it was a pretty clear message from Art that if you want something new, it's me, and from Bill is if you want experience, it's me. And that was right from the beginning, wasn't it? Right out of the gate.
Yeah, right out of the gate, that was the perspective. One thing that I thought was interesting was how often the answers to the questions from Art Lowry's perspective really went to the people being served and the people who are experiencing law enforcement, the people who are experiencing police, and how often Mr. Schramm's answers went to the experience of the police themselves. And that was true when they talked about consolidation of services. For example, Lowry said, it sounds good on paper, but it doesn't work. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Schramm agreed with him. He said, you know, it's not going to work either, but his reason that it wasn't going to work is unions and pay scale. So he was concerned about the police themselves. I thought that was interesting, how their perspectives on who was being affected differed, but they came out the same way on the answer.
And wasn't it nice to have a debate where, maybe because we're so used to the presidential scene, but where there wasn't a lot of talking over each other? There was aggressive answers, and there was definitely aggressive moments through the debate, but there wasn't too much running long. Only once or twice I can think of, and that was only for a few seconds. And it wasn't aggressive, let me talk, let me talk. That was kind of nice to hear.
It was a very civil debate. And
I think a handshake at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So we got a little bit of time left. Dan Mandel was more of a town hall. Frank, just quick, 30 seconds here.
Sure.
What do you think about Mayor Mandel's town hall?
I give him a lot of credit. I mean, that's a lot of time to fill. I thought he did a really good job. He covered all the issues they asked him, all the way down to the trash bags, right?
Yeah.
I think he did a good job of selling what he's done as mayor, and I think he's doing a good job.
All right, Leslie, real quick, just 10, 20 seconds.
There was one little nugget that I thought was interesting, and that was that Mayor Mandel apparently disagrees with both sheriff candidates about shared services. Mayor Mandel thinks that it would be a good idea to have a countywide law enforcement. He thinks it's going to take a long time, and it may not get there for a while, but he seemed to think that that's a good direction to move in, while neither of the sheriff candidates did. All
right, so again, thank you both, Frank and Leslie, for being here tonight. Stay tuned to 18 News for more on your local election headquarters.